Correct, media and entertainment, yes.
Braden's efforts for the gaming space and advises on scalable solutions for software as a service and Python deployments. Prior to Databricks, he worked at Nike on data strategy and directed product for the advanced compute platform. He specializes in data governance, data warehousing, and enterprise data strategy. Holds a Master of Science in Statistics. He gave us a presentation at our inaugural event on the Genie spaces. So you'll be able to see how much progress Databricks has made in a short amount of time with what he's going to talk about today. So let's give a warm welcome to Peter Davis.
Thanks all. Thanks, Mark. So thank you all for your patience. I'm glad there was food. Always fun to work through technical difficulties right at the start. So today, how many people have used Databricks? Or let me ask the inverse. How many people have not used Databricks? Okay, cool. I want to give just a really brief overview of what it is. I don't want to be too redundant. Happy to dive in at any point into more about what Databricks is and does. I am a senior solutions architect. What that means is I do technical enablement, right? So I go to companies like Nike or like Columbia, and when they're having trouble adopting the platform or they want to expand into new areas, I basically help them do that. So fairly deep bench, don't know everything. So I'd love for this to be as interactive as possible. So if there's things you don't understand, things you want to know more about, or maybe I just fumbled, please let me know and we can answer the questions in real time. So this is run of show. We'll just do a brief Databricks overview and talk about Unity Catalog at the same time. I'm going to give a Genie update. As Mark mentioned, I gave a talk here last August on aspects of Genie. We'll explain what it is. We'll also go through Genie Code and AI Dev Kit, and then we'll talk about some best practices. So the general theme of this, I think, was it back in February, March? I wasn't able to be here, but Scott Hanselman was here from Microsoft.
He was here in December.
December, okay, thank you. Okay, and I think he was talking about maybe AI and possibly vibe coding and all that. Okay, so I'm going to extend that a little bit. In particular, Genie Code is within Databricks. It's a way of doing natural language to get results, build a pipeline, get a report, whatever it may be. And I'm going to show the same thing with AI Dev Kit, which is a way of doing it outside of Databricks. So if I have a Claude code in a command line, or maybe there's like a dozen different tools you could use where what it's giving you is skills that you can leverage to then produce work in Databricks. Is there anybody who has done vibe coding already? Okay, cool. All right, good. That's a good benchmark. Thank you. Any questions before I begin? Sweet. Okay. So I'm not going to be too heavy on the architecture. Just do want to point out this is how Databricks thinks about the world of business. We have 20,000 customers now, 6 verticals. I am in media and entertainment, but I have worked in financial services, healthcare and life sciences, retail, manufacturing. I haven't really done energy. So I have a pretty decent bench across all of this, and it's really interesting to see what different sectors are doing, for instance, and how they're leveraging AI today. So for instance, you're going to do new drug detection over in healthcare and life sciences, super cool. Fox has a Rufus chat app, which gets you sports results almost immediately. And there's a ton of optimizations, like 7-Eleven is improving time to market on reports and all that with AI. But it's really hard, right? And I'm sure everybody here in the room has lived this. We've got our old school data transactional databases, so OLTP. Then we go to OLAP or data warehousing. We've got data scientists using Internet of Things at really high volume. Putting all this together is challenging. So in 2019, the founders of Databricks wrote a white paper that proposed something called the lake house. Okay, they got kind of laughed at a little bit, like, oh, that's silly. And what that means is putting all your stuff in one place. So you can use it the same way you do from anywhere. Turns out it's a good idea, and everybody's doing it. So if you go to any of the hyperscalers, Azure, AWS, Google, all of them talk about the lakehouse. Okay, so we were pioneering that category, which is kind of neat. And what that really means is you can store your data in the hyperscaler in cheap commodity storage. Okay, think S3, ADLS in Azure, GCP, Google Cloud. Then what we do is within Databricks itself, we layer something called Unity Catalog on top of that. And this is super important because it means that all of the workloads that you do, whether you are dealing with a data warehouse, whether you're dealing with unstructured data, PDFs that you need to read, or you're serving agents and models and model context protocol servers today, so this is all AI, right? You are governing it in the same way when you are in Databricks. Okay, so from the time it is down on disk to the time you are serving that model to do predictive analytics, you are basically governing it with the same model. And along the way, you get cool things like discovery, because we understand how you are using the system. So we give you better results as a result of that. Business semantics for, everybody talks about a semantic layer for reporting. Lineage comes along for the ride. All you have to do is create a new table. You get lineage in the system. And just to showcase a teeny bit of that, this is the Catalog Explorer. And in here, I've got a catalog I'm working. This is a demo setup, and I've got 2 tables in here, and I'm just going to go to, say, silver properties. And here I can go to lineage. And what I can see is I have basically, in the last 2 days, I set all this up, right, that I'm showing you. And I vibe coded most of it. But the main point is, in this lineage, I can see here are my upstream tables, here are my downstream tables. So if I'm an analyst, I'm like, where'd this data come from? Or I'm a data scientist, I'm like, where'd this data come from? I can see it automatically, right, as part of the catalog system. And just to sort of show that in graphical form, same thing here, right? So I can see not only where my tables came from and where they're going, but I can do it at the column level. Click on any column and see where it came from. Okay. So I always love showing this off, but let me close this. The other thing that I can do within the catalog system is give comments, right? And we have an AI generator that is really high quality that I generated all these comments with. All of the things that we're talking about within Unity Catalog, all the things that we're talking about, you really want good metadata. And that's regardless of whether you're Databricks or you're at some other place. If you're using AI isn't just looking at the data. It's looking at, generally, it's the models, depending on what you do. When we use something like natural language coding, we're looking at the metadata. We're looking at the descriptions, we're looking at the column names, we're looking at the context as well of how you use the system. Any questions so far? I know I'm going relatively fast. Hi. Mm-hmm. So this lineage, the graph you're talking about that I showed? This one? Yeah. It is dependent on what you've built. Yeah. So you can look at historically. I don't know exactly. I'd have to go in. We have something called system tables, which tracks all activity. So to see any kind of I'd have to go research basically to answer your question specifically on like version control, because it's version to a certain extent in that you've got columns as they change over time and queries that change things over time. Can you go back in here and see that? That I'd have to go look. I haven't tried it yet. Like I said, I don't know everything about the POM.
Well,
yeah, please.
Yeah, you do have time travel. You can select as of a different time or a version on a table and see what it looked like back then. Also with Lakebase, which is the PostgreSQL feature in Databricks, they have this great So it's a unique proposition there that I think you could use version control there as well.
You can, but so I can come into, this is a regular table. I was just, so I can come in, no, I have to kick off a, there we go. So I'm starting up a cluster so I can actually see the data. So I can actually look at the history of this table within the interface. And to Mark's point, I can do time travel, which means I can go back to a prior version of this table. And in Lakebase, you can do that especially well. It's OLTP. But the lineage graph itself, would you be able to reflect that past via the graph? That I don't know. Does it make sense?
I'm just curious, is that like, is it just like a history of like how the data has been manipulated?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, basically it reflects everything I did to create those tables. So I'll come back to it. So I created this silver properties table from this property and that this properties table and that bronze properties table. So it's reflecting that that's how that table got created. Okay, got it. I know. Thank you. Okay, so Unit Catalog. I'm a data governance nerd, so I actually really love this product. One other cool thing is when you need to ingest data from other sources, you can federate out and control them just like you do anything here, right? You can't control the server that way. It's the window in, so I can take a look at some of my Teradata data from within Databricks. Okay. For those of you who were here last year, I did last August talk about Genie, some dashboards, Unity Catalog, and then I already talked about metadata here. Super important in terms of getting good outputs from AI. Okay, metadata and context are super important to help AI produce good results for you. And just at the start here, we have a lot. Databricks moves very fast, and so we come up with names, and then we try to converge products, right? So if a year ago, we would be talking about the Databricks Assistant. Then it evolved to Genie Code, okay? Same thing, we used to have Genie Spaces, Genie Rooms, AI, BI, Genie, and now it's just Genie Spaces. I'm gonna show you both of these today, so don't worry about remembering all this right now. There is a simplified, stripped-down version of Databricks I'm not going to talk about very much today, but this is for things like leaders or people who aren't really interested in knowing the complexities of Databricks. They can just come to a single display and just ask questions. And then our dashboards are really just called AI BI now. So we're on a simplification strategy around what we're calling Genie Code, Genie Spaces, and AI BI. I saw your laugh, so yeah, it's a thing.
It's summit time, so
yeah,
you'll probably notice a few name changes announced at next month.
You will. This simplified interface allows you to access either AI BI dashboards or Genie Spaces, so it's kind of cool. All right, we already talked a little bit about the open formats, the Unity catalog. I mentioned the word lakehouse. That's where you're bringing all your data together. Okay, and so Genie sits on top of that, essentially using metadata, but also the information about how you do your work to then make it very easy to generate code if you're a more technical user, and then very easy to do data analysis if you're a less technical user. And there's a crossover here, right? Like analysts can be technical users can be analysts, and all that. It's more like if I'm just doing natural language, show me a dashboard, show me some results, I'll use Genie. If I'm write me a very complex SQL statement, generate an exploratory data analysis, I'll probably be using Genie Code. Okay, so it's just a simplification again of this platform. So this is just a window into Genie Spaces. What we're doing is just asking a question. We're finding out that in June we had a spike. So what was the significant peak that we saw in June? So it's diving in and explaining those results to us. So it's doing two things here. It's not only doing descriptive statistics, it will also do an attempt at some inference, causality. right? And so that's a huge thing. Mark mentioned what's changed in Genie. A year ago, I would not have trusted results for this. Like it wasn't ready yet because we were doing like deep research into how to do this, but it's really cool now. Okay, and so I'm going to go over to, here is a Genie space. So over on the left, this is the Databricks interface for those who are not familiar with it. Over on the left, you can see Genie spaces. It's a little washed out, but that's what's highlighted. And you can see that I've got 6 different spaces in here. Wanderbricks is the data set that we're using. It's in the samples catalog. Everything I'm doing here today, you can reproduce. And I'm very happy to produce a document that gives you the instructions on how to do so. So the data that we're generally using today, again, is going to be off this Wanderbricks. And then the other ones, you can see I happen to work with some resorts, tribal casinos and all that. So I've got some other, I do other demos with this. When I go into, let me go into, all right, let me close this just because it's a little more confusing. I thought I had asked a question.
Yeah, when you said gaming, I thought you meant video gaming.
We do both, yeah. So we work with the largest video game manufacturers and also some of the largest resort properties. So I'm going to kick this off. I thought I had done it before, but somehow I lost the results. So I'm in a Genie space right now, and what I'm asking is, there are 2 modes. One is agent mode, one is chat mode. This is for like, just give me a quick answer. This is, I really want to dive into stuff. I want to kick off. This is a series of models, an ensemble model, that will do some deep reasoning. It'll make a plan, and it'll do iterative processing to try to give you a result. Do you have a question?
Yeah, are those Genie outputs, are those deterministic on like the previous result set? So like in that you said yeah, I saw a spike in June, but I would imagine in order to analyze what that spike was a result of, you probably need to look at a different table or a different, some kind of dimension.
So,
are they deterministic in that sense?
that is a complex question. It's a very good question. I'm going to talk about Genie spaces because Genie code is going to be a little different, right? Yeah.
So I'm still trying to get an idea of when you use agent versus chat mode.
Yeah.
Obviously, agent, if you wanted to do something, and not just a read-only task to be an agent, but here you've chosen agent for really just a read-only sort of interpretation. What are some characteristics of a task that would make you choose agent?
If I want it to do deeper, reasoning is like a word I don't use very often because let's face it, we're talking about a bunch of LLMs, right? Large language models. And so what we're doing is asking the series of LLMs to process and think about the context of the data, the context of my question, the context of prior questions in the same session. And as that happens, how much money do you want to spend on the answer is one honest question, because we're going to spend tokens to do this, right? We don't charge for those now, but eventually. The second thing is, how complex an answer do I want? Am I just asking what were sales in June? I'm probably going to use chat for that. Am I asking, give me the outliers for the entire whole set of sales data for the last year and explain to me why you think those are? I'm going to use agent mode. Now I'm using 2 extremes, right? One is just like, tell me what sales were. The other is, now let's do some really complex stuff, okay? But there's going to be a gray area at some point where you're like, I just want a really simple result, versus I want it to actually plan out what's going on. In terms of the context that was asked about before, so you can see right here it's telling you what it's going to do at every step. So it's going to do a overview of properties, of reviews, a distribution, look at host statistics, and then it's going to start going through some counts. And it's going to then give me results. And we don't need to read through all of these. I just want to talk about it a little bit. But it's basically saying, here's summary statistics of what's going on, how many properties there are, how many hosts are managing them in terms of destinations as well. It then gives me some additional statistics around ranges, some metrics I could look at, and then there's opportunities. hey, we could do some price prediction. If we look at our gold tables, we can do some market segmentation. So it's offering up what else would you like to do with the data that you have, okay? So all this was just with this very, very simple query of, what did I even ask? Describe this data set and some of the key performance indicators and categories that I can analyze, okay? So in terms of context, a GD space is kind of special. And that's because we look at a domain like sales or hotels or whatever it may be, and we create a space to do analysis specifically on that domain of data. And we do some setup. So we choose the data that's going to be part of this space. Then we give it instructions. This gives business context for what's going on in terms of the hotel space. If I was back at Nike, I would be giving it context about specific things. Am I talking about consumers? Then there would be context about consumers. If I'm talking about shoes, it would be context about shoes. It also gets additional instructions, SQL expressions and queries and all that. And what we're doing is we're curating an environment where anybody can come in and just ask questions. They don't have to worry about the underlying data. They don't care. What they get is that experience of, I just get to get my answers from writing English, whatever language they happen to be writing in. Okay? So that's what a Genie Space is for. It's like domain specific. Let me get results to my leaders, to my business users, to whoever the consumer internally might be, and they don't have to worry about anything else. Yeah.
Does this also have the option to like create deliverables from like whatever you queried up here? Because I'm assuming like if you're in sales, a lot of times you then have to like aggregate all this information into somewhat like some kind of sales pitch or some kind of board.
So we do see customers using Genie Space. So there's a way to chain together models, right? So Genie, you can ask a question of Genie and then use the results as an input to another model, where you could do that kind of output.
Okay.
Make sense?
So it's not like a built-in, it's more like a getting quick information from the data you already have
In the context of the room, yeah. But then you can use multiple rooms together to form a more complex thing, right?
Or you can basically, if you have a specific output that you're looking for, a user can just ask for that type of output as well.
Oh, I see. So like, you can like create me a deck about these like past quarters of
Yeah, decks are hard. Decks are hard. So there's a thing. There are two things that let's talk about AI for a second, right? Because at its heart, we're talking about a large language model, and you can give AI additional capabilities by adding skills. Okay, these are very specific instruction sets that are tailored to certain things. Like there can be a Google slide or a PowerPoint skill that you can add in. How successful it's going to be is another kind of interesting question. I personally have not had success doing that yet. I'm trying, but there are other skills, and we'll actually show an example of one. Oh, sorry, I'm assuming. Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering, do you have an opinion on, so I think in the data you point out the raw tables versus like a metric view, and then you have the semantic layer and the SQL expressions. Is there like a pro to separating out the SQL expressions here versus just having the metric view?
What a great question. I was in fact going to get to that later, but we'll touch on it now. Yeah. So Joanne's guide basically say, hey, look, when you're trying to tie this data, you might want to go look over here, right? That's kind of the way I think about it. SQL expressions are calculations that are guaranteed to be kind of correct, right? If I wanted to use these calculations outside of here, I would use a metric view that then makes the calculation available to anybody else using the system. Like I would turn it into a view that somebody else can see.
Does Genie find this easier? Like, does it find it easier to navigate measures here versus?
The straight up answer is I don't think it's easier or not. I would have to do some research on my own to do that. Both are very viable. Like I can take, so here's this data set. Let's go back to the data. These happen to be tables in this one. You can use materialized, I believe you can use materialized views. You can certainly use metric views as inputs to this. So it would find them, I would think it would be equally accessible. It comes down to reusability to me. Like, if I'm working with teams across the company, I don't want to isolate something into a Genie room. If other people can use that, that adds business value. So I'm going to put it and make it accessible to other people. Other questions? Yeah.
So how do we make sure the output is accurate? Basically, we have this.
Yeah. So there's a process that can you hold that question for about 25 minutes? And it's a great question. And in fact, there's a process that I'll describe. Yeah. Okay. So we went deep into Genie spaces, so we'll come back to that. Right now, I do want to emphasize, now that we've talked a little bit about LLMs and about Genie spaces, one of the things that's really interesting is that there's a tendency to overtrust outputs from ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it might be. In fact, I think there's a cognitive surrender is a term I just heard today, which I.
A guy I did research with in graduate school actually coined that with a postdoc.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Doing the tri-level thinking, so instead of just system 1, system 2, system 3 is now the whole AI.
Okay. Oh, there you go. So what I just read today, and somebody can give a better definition. To me, it's basically you're over trusting the systems, right? You're no longer using critical thinking to judge what is coming out of it. And to your question, you absolutely have to be judgy, right? And these are I stole these from our internal chats, and other people have pulled them probably from Instagram or whatever. But this is Claude, not to harp on Claude, but essentially saying 5 days of the week contain the letter D. Patently false, right? All 7 days contain the letter D. And it's like, here, I've been lazy. Absolutely, when you're using AI and using tools, it's incumbent upon us. This is now the value we are adding, is making sure that the outputs are correct and that we're curating what the system is giving us. Okay. Genie code itself is a slightly different animal. Remember the previous thing, we just had a search interface down at the bottom. We can type a question and we get results. Here, accessible via, there's little icons that it's now a Genie lamp instead of that diamond. You can click on that and get this sidebar where you basically give natural language instructions for the system to build something for you, okay? Whether it's a dashboard or a SQL query or whatever else you might want to generate, okay? That's inside of Databricks. AI Dev Kit interacts with Databricks from the outside. So I think I'm mirroring my entire display, so give me just one sec. Here we go. This is Claude's command line interface where I am interacting. You can see it's me. I'm interacting with my own demo environment, which is where most of this demo came from. So I've done, for you all today, I've done a parallel build. I gave instruction to Claude code and I gave instructions to Genie code. So one is outside leveraging the AI Dev Kit, right? What it does is it's loading up a bunch of skills, understanding how to do things within Databricks. You can do things, coding assistants can do that with many platforms. And then it's already built into Databricks, so Genie code has an advantage to do it when we're on the inside. Right? So anyway, gives your AI coding assistant the knowledge and tools to build in Databricks, and then bridges the AI assistants. The one I just showed happened to be Claude, but you can use Cursor, Windsurf. I've got another customer using Klein, which is an open source AI assistant within Databricks.
The certified gold project, what does that mean? I think certified gold data project.
I'm not familiar, I'm sorry.
Well, go back to the previous slide. I was just curious. A certified Databricks gold project.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah.
The classification I haven't.
I'm going to go over to GitHub here. And what that means is we're not supporting it, but it does have a lot of support for continued development, right?
So it's a higher level of support than, say,
I'd have to look at the Mark, to give you a real definition, I'd have to look at it. I think that's Like if I go to the README, it'll probably tell me, but no. If you, actually, I'll write that down. This is the peril of stealing slides internally. Okay, so the core components, you can see these skills. So for instance, like the analytics, there's one, I don't know, maybe it's on here, maybe not. So there's one specifically for building dashboards, right? So there's a skill that AI Dev Kit, and this is a GitHub repo, you can download it and use it today, where if you then say, oh, create this dashboard, it's gonna have that fundamental ability to write the code that is necessary to produce a dashboard within Databricks. Pretty easy to stand up and leverage. Wanderbricks itself, if you're in Databricks and you go to the samples catalog, you will see the schema Wanderbricks, and it contains all of this. All right, I'm just letting you know this because, again, everything I'm doing here today is accessible to you in the exact same way. Okay, so let's go to, I want the pipeline, here we go. Okay, I'm coming back. I'm gonna show. Okay, so basically I wrote, I borrowed somebody else's demo from Australia, which was very helpful. And in that, he said, please create, just create a pipeline with bronze streaming tables that ingest samples.wanderbricks, the properties, reviews, hosts, I don't need to read it all. The point is, grab a bunch of tables from that schema, don't do any transformations, just do a straight up bronze, add some table comments, and then I changed it to be my catalog and the schema that I want. So this happens to be Wander Genie. So this means I was using Genie code and literally those English language instructions to then generate a pipeline to put data into the schema, okay? And what happened is I did it both for Claude and I did it for Genie. Claude prefixed everything with bronze underscore. And I've been using Claude for a while, so it may have learned that from me in prior sessions, I don't know. Here, Genie did not, it just copied them over. It kind of took it literally. So the lesson learned is whenever you're doing instructions, and even though they're English language, clarity is good, right? Because all it can do is give you the outputs based on the context of what you're doing right now, some instructions, possibly some past history, depending on the model. Okay, so I learned, oh, you know what? Maybe I should tell it that when you're doing data engineering for me, prefix bronze with bronze, prefix silver with silver, and prefix gold with gold, okay, if I want that. So silver, basically I said, hey, let's do this again. And I did give it the instruction. I just added this as part of the instruction. This is the only thing I've done here is I've taken each of the instructions, put them on a separate line and bullet pointed them just to make them a little easier to read. This is all just one giant paragraph. Okay, so again, all I did was paste this in, prefix tables with silver, and look at that, Genie is now recognizing that and adding silver in front. You can still see the bronze does not have it, but Claude knew to go ahead and do that, right? That's the only difference between the two. Any questions so far? Okay.
On the dev kit, are you doing a global scoping or project scoping?
Project scoping. Yeah, I really, so let me just explain what we mean by that. So if I get, if I just say, I'm gonna look where I am. Okay, so I'm, I don't know if people can see it, but I'm in users, Peter Davis, projects, Wanderbricks demo. So I'm in this particular directory. And when I kick off the agent, we have a little wrapper around it just for security, but I kick it off with a period at the end to kick off what's going on. And it's gonna want to reauth. I'm not gonna bother to go through that. The point is, I am making sure that Claude is scoped to the project I'm in, because I really don't like these tools running all over my hard drive, okay? So something to think about as you're using tools, my opinion is trust but verify and be very cautious about what you're doing. Okay, I'm going to close Genie code on the right-hand side here and zoom in just a little bit. All right, so this is I don't want to overload with terminology, but this is a pipeline that was built by those English instructions. Okay, this one happens to be the Wander Genie ingestion, and so it identified the source data, basically made materialized views to create the silver, and then a gold. Right, so this is the whole process that was done. Really what it did is write all the SQL. Okay, that's what this is under the hood that then gets turned into a pipeline. So Genie code basically orchestrated all this for me. It wrote the code, created the pipeline, ran the pipeline, generated the data. Life is pretty good because I spent like 30 seconds on it. I copied and pasted. Claude did the same thing, which is pretty cool. This is the pipeline that Claude, there's minor differences, but fundamentally the results are exactly the same, which is what I would expect, so that's good. And here's the code Claude generated. Again, very similar situation. Also spent about minute and a half, whatever, doing it just from 2 different environments. So then I want to talk about instruction files for just a sec. So in both, I don't want to overgeneralize, but most coding assistants, you're going to be able to tell it persistently, every time you come in here, do it this way, right? And so what I did was I wanted to say, add an instruction to always create bronze tables with the prefix bronze, et cetera, right? And so I asked each of them to do this. And Claude said, sure, I'll do this. And I'm going to scope it. I'm going to add it to a memory, which is basically Claude's instruction set, one of their instruction sets. And then I said to Genie Code, oh, please do the same thing. And so it said, hey, I added the naming convention comment. It pointed out to me that the existing tables don't follow this. Would you like me to rename that, basically fix the prior work? And I said, yes, please do that and add this to the general instructions file. To which it said, no. And the reason is because it's a guardrail in the system. It's basically like, you have to go and do this. I can't do it for you. All right. In other words, if you want to change that file, you're going to have to do it in this way. It's not something I can do. I don't know. I don't have the authority to do that. But it did tell me what it did update. So it renamed all the tables. And then it pointed out, which I ignored, frankly, that the old tables still exist, and I could have dropped them. Okay, which is pretty cool. Claude, it's project scoped, and it can go ahead and do that right. So that was an interesting. I didn't realize Claude can do that, and Genie can't. So it's just a little learning thing. And you can see what happened with Genie. The old tables are disconnected. So this is the pipeline that existed just from silver to gold. So basically I told it, rebuild it, and now we have a pipeline from start to finish. Okay, so just a little learning experience about, again, it comes down to, all of this took me a couple of hours, like tops. A year ago, it would have taken a lot more experimentation. 2 years ago, I would have had to write all this, okay? That doesn't mean I'm free from responsibility about correct instruction sets and giving good instructions to the system. So this is kind of moving into what I've heard some people call spec-driven development. The point is you're giving specifications to the system so that it does what you want it to do. Okay? And I forget what this is. Oh, this is the let's add a gold table and just some instructions about that. So again, bullet points are just for show. I wouldn't actually do that in instructions except for clarity. And I already mentioned that I had to rebuild stuff. So, any questions? Yeah.
When you're doing, let's say you go through this exercise further down the road when there are many more analytic dependencies and gold layer objects that are referencing these silver and bronze data sets. From a best practices perspective, are you using links? Is there metadata like grids that you're using to make sure that you're not missing anything?
That is a really interesting question. And the other interesting thing about best practices is in my experience, I found that different best practices work for different groups better. Sometimes they're universal, like maybe you should index the table if you're querying it on a bunch. Others are a little more like ephemeral, like this company wants to do it this way. I'm working with a group that does entirely table-driven development. Would this work for them? Probably, if they did the right amount of training. But it's going to be different than people who are doing spec-driven development. I mean, they're kind of two flavors of the same thing. So not trying to dodge the question, I'm saying it's complicated. And I would probably want to understand the situation before I made a recommendation, okay? Would these instructions scale, I think is another aspect of the question you're asking. And the answer is probably not. I would do a framework. So if I'm like talking about a couple thousand objects, I'm going to think about the problem I'm really trying to solve, come up with a framework for it, and then have these instructions fit that framework so that we can have a repeatability, but also if we have to destroy an upstream table, we don't completely destroy the system. Does that make sense? Does anybody else want to add to that, like in their experience? No, it's okay. Like any folks building at scale here who want to share?
We're doing a massive migration from Redshift right now.
Yeah, I hear it. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, like, if this process, like, imports to the customer becomes like a pretty common workflow, is this an instance where you would identify this process or make this into a workflow? Because, like, let's say you always work with a customer that, like, transforms their data in a specific way, is this an instance as a solutions engineer where you would make this much more automated or identified process?
That's a short answer is probably. I would try to automate as much as possible, particularly. But the other thing I want to do is I want to make things consistent, right? I don't want naming conventions being kind of Wild West. I want people to be able to understand what a table is just from the name, ideally, and the description of the table. So I would talk about instruction a little bit more in skills in just a sec, where you can actually add in things that will help train the system. So for instance, actually I don't have it on here, but we have there's a demo where there's an instructions file that literally dictates how columns should be built, right? Yeah. In fact, let me actually go to here. Okay, so I'm going to go into the workspace and maybe I'll just increase this a little bit. Hopefully I can do that. There we go. Okay. So I'm in my workspace, and you can see here where to go. Where am I? Oh, silly me. I didn't. I'll just have to go to it. So here's my dashboards. You can see here's Wander Claude, here's Wander Genie, and Wander Genie formatted. And so I actually took some snapshots to make it easier. What was interesting is when I did this, Genie is built in, right? Genie code is built in, so it's like, I'm just going to do it because I know how. Claude loaded the skill Databricks AI BI dashboards. Okay, so it knows that's part of the dev kit. It knows that it's there. It's going to go ahead and load it as it needs it. Very similar dashboards. What's interesting to me is, we get a bar graph distribution, and that's kind of like the Genie format, and yet I love this distribution better than I love this one. Again, had I given more clear instructions than the instruction set I did, I would have gotten better results. Okay, so it again comes down to the kind of instructions that you're giving. And here I just said use colors more effectively, so it didn't really change the actual charts themselves. What it did was added color. Okay. And this is literally just me. I'm going to go back to here. This is literally me typing into this little window, use colors more effectively, right? Yeah. Okay.
To backtrack a little bit, you said you stressed the importance of that data, like to do it with colonnade.
Mm-hmm.
If you you skew or like overweight when you're like inferring a schema?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I have a completely solid answer for it. What I can say is I've seen some folks trim, like they're like, hey, AI generated comments are great, but they're a little verbose. And in fact, we've added in a button when you're looking at the comments to shorten this comment, which is interesting. One thing that I do want to caution is if you, using AI to generate anything or do destructive stuff, that's where we want to do guardrails around it. I'm a very trust but verify kind of person, meaning I'm not going to let it just write all my comments. But I am going to let it accelerate my work so it makes me an editor as opposed to a copy person. Did that answer your question? Is that okay?
Just, yeah, kind of like, where do we draw that line of like, this is sufficient and beneficial, but not, we won't over-index on this?
It's a really good question. Let me go into one of these. Let's go into Wonder Genie, and we'll go into Bronze Reviews. So I look at comments as useful for two reasons. So let's just say text comment using of the user's review, detailing their experience or feedback regarding the property. What's interesting is this is already a string. Do I need the text content? No, right? Would I trim that? Yes, I would. So the thing that I want out of this are two things. One, any of my analysts or data scientists can come in and understand what the heck that column means. And two, am I getting high quality results out of a Genie space, right? Those are the main two goals. And just for grins, I'll go ahead and, oh, no, never mind. I can't do that because I've been talking long enough that I killed my server. Okay, I'll come back to that hopefully. All right, so we talked about Genie spaces. Again, Genie code was the thing on the right-hand side where we're generating code or generating dashboards. Genie spaces, we're doing those natural language queries where we're getting results, right? When you're setting this up, you do want it to be a focus. If you do a Genie space, it should be focused. Are we talking about hotels? Are we talking about consumers? You're going to add instructions, and then you're going to validate the accuracy. So I've talked about this a couple times, but when you look at the results of a Genie space, there's the opportunity to thumbs up and thumbs down the content. And then the space author can look at that going, what's the quality of the outputs? And then tune what's going on. So we want to always have experts, before we turn it loose to anybody, we want experts to come in and take a look.
When we thumbs down something, does that just put a flag or does that actually reinforce?
It just flags. It just flags. It does not actually reinforce. And the interesting thing is, you could go either way with that decision. What I would want to make sure, just my opinion, I haven't talked to product folks, but I would be concerned about users who may not have the context for the actual underlying data giving the wrong answers, the wrong thumbs up and down, which might skew. So that's why I think they kind of left it, but I got to talk to product about that. Okay, so it's a 5-step process, right? We create a room, a space. We do some modeling. You already saw that with the data. We give instructions and examples. That's the joins that we saw before. And then we do the testing and iteration and monitoring and feedback. And this is where we're having people thumbs up and thumbs down, and then we're changing the room. It's not a trivial process, right? When I did this, and it was on a fairly bigger data set, doing all of this probably took me about 10 hours. Okay, the benefit is huge because people can just come and ask questions. What we've done since then is some folks internally have produced Genie Workbench. This is on GitHub as well. I think I got, yeah, so here's the GitHub repository. It's open, it's public, it's open source. And what it does is it allows you to point this is currently an ensemble. It's got both Genie code, and it also can use an external LLM, right? The default is Claude Sonnet, but you can tell it whatever LLM you want to use. And what it will do is, I'm going to just go in and look at the score. It will create a space for you, and it will then judge the space. Okay, so this space happens to be trusted. Before I added comments, we were over here. Okay, and that's because, again, Genie spaces are highly dependent on comments for the context to answer a question. So as I added comments and I optimized, I got it all the way to trusted, which is super cool. Would I still would I just turn it over without having experts come in and look at the outputs? The answer is no, I would not. Okay, just because the system thinks it's trusted, I still want humans to come and judge the output of the data. Okay, and so this is that Genie space that I showed before. All of this was generated by that Databricks. Sorry, the Genie workbench. All I did was tell it the tables that I wanted. It generated the instructions, it generated the joins, it generated these expressions, and it generated these queries. And the only thing I would change, and I'm going to give feedback to the team, is, hey, can we make this a view, an object that other people can leverage? And I don't know the answer to that, but point being, this is contained in the room. It's not necessarily accessible to other folks. So if I use Workbench, and I encourage people tinkering with it, what I would do is I would then take these SQL expressions and put them in a metric view. Okay, so I would, in fact, probably have Genie generate that. Any questions on this? So again, Workbench, and I'll just go into here, and I'll just say, hey, I want to create the space. So this is what I did earlier today. Because of the whole, if you remember, I generated some tables that didn't have the bronze in front, right? So what I did was I regenerated it, and all I did was select those tables, and then it starts to ask me exactly what I want out of the room. So I'm going to go back to the deck. Oh, I am in the deck. That's why. Here we go. Okay. So what it basically said was, it says, got it. Okay, you want 12 tables. All right, let me describe all the tables. Now let me run a data quality assessment to understand, is this even going to work for you? Then it asked me, what is the space for? Okay, and so I give it an answer. I want this for analytics, performance tracking, pricing, blah, blah, blah. Then it gives me an answer of how it thinks the room is shaping up. And it's recommending staying a little lean, using only silver and gold based on my use case. I can change all this. This is basically what the developer set up. Who's the primary audience? I say both. I want internal analysts and business stakeholders able to use it, and it goes ahead and builds it. And this is, again, that sort of original result before I then went in and added all the comments. So long story short, what this did was it takes a build of a room, a Genie space from that, personally for me, it was about 10 hours to about an hour tops. So it makes it super, super easy to generate this. Okay. And then I can do optimize. Well, let's ignore that for now. And what they then did was say, hey, build me a new executive dashboard from the same schema and use that Genie space, and let's call it formatted. And this is where I'm actually invoking the skill to try to look at, make the dashboard look like it's NASA or NOAA. And all it really did was do some color changes, because that's really all I asked for. So you can see that it's actually using, I believe it's NOAA's color scheme. It's a little more striking when you use some other brands that are out there. But basically, same dashboard. All it did was change the color scheme. Okay, so takeaways. The AI is actually pretty awesome. Like we are encouraged to use AI a ton. Like it's definitely part of my day job. I'm sure it's part of a lot of folks' day job these days. Just really candidly, it is never as good as leadership thinks it is, right? The C-suite, it just is not. And the key that I really want everybody to take away is that it needs curation. By that I mean we need to think critically about it, and we also need to be as open as we can about the limitations. Okay, AI Dev Kit is a great way to, a Klein or a Claude or whatever. If you prefer an external coding agent, go nuts. AI Dev Kit is pretty awesome, and you can make it leaner. You can add in additional skills. Genie code is now a fantastic way to build within Databricks. The key there is like literally I gave them the same instructions. And the only thing I really had to do was give more instructions that would have made the results better. Other than that, pretty much identical outputs in my opinion. Genie Workbench is amazing. I love it and I demo it all the time. And it really, when people see how easy it is to create that natural language space where people can just write queries, it kind of lights up the room. So if you are using Databricks and you are leveraging Genie Spaces, I highly encourage it. Give it a try. In all cases, speaking of best practices, metadata matters, right? This is both helpful for humans, but also AI. Try to keep, there's a lot more detail out there on the web than I can give in this talk, but let's keep things concise and precise, okay? And you saw that I give like really trivial instructions. I still got decent outputs. Were I doing this in a production setting or were I doing this for actual business users, I would have been very verbose in exactly what I wanted the system to produce, like the format of the tables and all that. And then, we saw that there are calculated fields that exist in that Genie space. I really prefer things, if it's going to provide business value, I prefer things to be produced as data products. So think metric views, think additional tables, think views that everybody can access rather than being out in a point solution. Okay, that's it. Any other questions? Oh yeah, Mark.
On the AI Dev Kit, you have support for Claude, Gemini, and Codex, right?
Let me go to that slide because it actually says. I don't want to misremember something. And it's probably expanded since when this slide was produced. Claude Code, Cursor, Windsurf, Copilot out of the box.
I think.
Okay.
What is your take on using the different modes, the different models, thinking versus instant models? Do you prefer to use thinking more? I mean, I know some people like the ability to see the progress being made and then be able to nudge it here and there.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. So what Mark I think is referring to is when you're using either Genie Code or Claude, you're gonna ask it to do a thing. It's then going to say, okay, I'm about to do X, Y, or Z. Do I have permission? Basically. And when you do that, there's generally an option to say, yes, do it once. Yes, do it for this thread, or yes, do it always, right? Depends on the context. If it's going to be destructive, I typically like to, yes, do this once and let me monitor what's going on. And if it's not going to be destructive, like additive, so I'm building all those servo tables, I might say yes for this thread. Go ahead and just go nuts. Does that answer the question? Is that the question even?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
I wanted to go back to earlier we were looking at using the AI to pull out analytics and kind of bring up some high-level discussions of what you're finding in the data. And I saw there was like some hyperlinks with maybe citations, but back to the question of how would you then trace back and validate the data?
Can I have your attention, please? It is 6:30 and the library will be closing in 30 minutes at 7 o'clock.
Well, I guess we have our end time. So that is the history for each of the Genie chats, for instance. I can pull them up for, I don't know how long it is, but that's me interacting humanly with what's going on, right? There's also the concept of tracing within, as models are being used, right? Where you can trace, like, not just for Genie code and my interaction, but everybody in the system. So are you are you trying to look up what you did before? Are you trying to?
Yeah, back to the idea of I go to the chat or go to the agent and I'm like, pull up sales figures for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
It spits out these were great, but March was a weird
Okay.
Well, okay, before I go take that information and regurgitate it to others, I want to make sure that I'm not going to look silly.
Yeah, yeah.
Working with good data.
So there, in two things there. The first one is, let me come back to the dashboard. In here, you can actually ask questions right off the dashboard, right? So you can invoke Genie, and I happen to be in draft mode, but it would pop up a little Genie window here. If I'm back in the Genie space, okay, so I should ask a chat question.
I feel like, yeah, up top there, you've got like a form, maybe a hyperlink, like a citation or something. Is that, what is it called?
Oh, these citations, yes, yeah. So that shows you the data set, and then I can copy results so I can take a deeper look into it, and I can also show the code that's behind it.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So the outputs in Genie Spaces, typically it ends up as some variant of text to SQL, even though you see reasoning and inference at times. But you should be able to look at the source material. Okay. The only other thing I want to leave folks with is I showed some really trivial examples of skills. Okay, here is one that folks did for a demo where we have something called PII detection and auto classification within Databricks, but this was if you see any of these columns, add another tag of PII, right? And that's a skill that whenever I'm creating a new table, if I invoke that skill, those columns will be flagged. Okay, so what I'm asking is you to think about the possibilities beyond this, right? We've got several examples here, like naming conventions. Always name my bronze, silver, blah, blah. You can go like you can actually describe, hey, the entire table name should be this based on these parameters. So build the table name for me as you do the thing. Okay, so you can get quite complex with skills. Skills is a very broad topic. I just wanted to introduce it tonight, that and instructions, and give you all a sort of a flavor of, the goal tonight for me was, let me try to give everybody at least a similar understanding of what you can do with external coding assistants, internal coding assistants, and kind of the key factors you need to consider as you're leveraging them. Yeah.
So if someone wanted to go home tonight and use the edition, what you've covered today could they work on? Pre-edition.
I want to say everything. Yeah. I have not tried it personally, but I don't think I've crossed any boundaries of what is not available in free edition. You will run into limitations of how much compute you can use in free edition, right? Because we got to hold the bar somewhere. So, but you should be able to go home and tinker with this tonight, I would say. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Curious, with the specific skill there, credit score, not credit score, card number.
Yeah.
Is it searching for a label called card number, or is it searching for numbers that match the profile of credit card numbers?
It is searching, I believe, for the column name in this context, not necessarily the pattern matching. Again, this is. I didn't want to say go do it this way at all. I wanted to say these are things to contemplate, right? Because again, were I doing this, I would use auto classification for PII, because we've done a ton of research into it, and it's out there now in GA. There's a feature in Databricks itself. You can do that. If you don't have that, and you're like, I got to do something about PII, not a bad way to go if you're using an agent, then feeding a skill like that. Does that make sense?
So there's like the skills MD file and the instructions MD.
Mm-hmm.
What's your recommendation around like domain knowledge for a business? So just like general stuff like we use end of week data, or like our site crashed for 2 days on this day. So just general stuff that
It's pretty situational, and I realize we got to start cleaning up. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So normally, what I'd probably do is put it as instructions in a Genie space itself, give it that business context. I think it depends on where you need to leverage the data or the information. Is it just in that Genie space? Is it more broadly? if it's everybody in a workspace that needs to know it, I'd probably put it in the workspace instructions. There are character limitations, and you want to be careful about how much you're feeding the LLM. So there are definitely, I think there are going to be trade-offs, perhaps.
And is vector database connecting these spaces to
I don't know. That's a great question. Yeah. Okay. Feel free to reach out to me after this. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm sure my name's in the Meetup thingy. But thank you all very much. Really appreciate your attention and time.